Again, it's a win-win. They took hostages there on the 7th of October to hide them, to get them into the tunnel networks. If the Israelis go after them and they go there, then the world's media will say Israelis attack Shifa Hospital. And if they don't, then the Israeli prisoners can be smuggled through with ease. The way in which the international media has totally failed to educate its readers and its viewers that this is how Hamas wages war is still staggering to me.
A lot of people have used that term human shield. I'm not sure. It's one of those terms that people use without knowing what it plays out in the real world. What does it mean when people say Hamas uses civilians as human shields?
It's quite straightforward. If you had a gun on you now, or a knife, and I was sitting here and I didn't have a gun or a knife, and I had a child here who belonged to somebody, and I grab the child and I hold them in front of me, I'm trying to save my life by daring you to kill the child in order to kill me or get to me. Now, this is widely regarded in civilized society as not being a good thing to do.
And also a crime of war.
Yes, but that's how Hamas operate. And it's again, it's one of the interesting things I'm trying to explore in the book is what happens when these two totally different worlds of war operating meet. What happens? Nobody needs to take my word from it. I quote leadership of Hamas on this. When the leaders of Hamas are asked why civilians in Gaza are not allowed to shelter in the vast tunnel network which your tax dollars and my tax dollars helped to build, when the leadership of Hamas are asked why are the citizens of Gaza not allowed to be in these tunnels that you've built, the answer is it's because the tunnels are for our fighters, Hamas fighters, and for our rockets. Like, we can't have Gazan civilians using this precious rocket storage shelter merely to save their lives. What is it like when that world of war meets the world of war of Israel, which unfortunately has had to build shelter after shelter across the country to protect its citizenry from rocket fire? This is the difference between two different ways of war. But Israel, like any Western army, is forced to, and rightly so, operate within the norms of war. People can debate and argue about certain actions or certain operations or parts of operating procedure, but I mean, the IDF does not grab, Gazan civilians to the IDF in order that Hamas kills the Gazan civilian. And apart from the fact you're not allowed to do that in the laws of war, in any case, Hamas wouldn't care, because for them it's a win-win. I mean, the Gazan civilians, for them, are delightful damage. I mean, again, it's very, very hard for most Westerners to comprehend the means of war that Hamas operate under. One time I was in Gaza a lot with the IDF, and one time I was speaking to a soldier about the complexity of a part of the operation in one of the cities in Gaza. And he said, one of the problems is that every single day we have groups of civilians coming out with their hands in the air in areas we need to operate in, and we're trying to clear civilians in order to get to Hamas. And every day, multiple times a day, groups of civilians will come out of a building with their hands in the air or waving white flag, and from the middle of the group of civilians, also dressed as civilians, will come Hamas fighters firing at us, at the IDF. That is a crime of war. You're not meant to dress in civilian clothing, live among civilians and fight, because you put the civilian population at risk. Amazingly enough, Hamas does not care about the civilian population of Gaza.
And you discuss the Hamas infrastructure in the book. and you have an interesting story of someone you identify as Major Y, and he goes into a house, a regular civilian house. He says, we skip the bedrooms, the parents' bedrooms, we skip the living room, we skip the kitchen, we go straight into the children's room. And when people just read that, that is an admission of, look, the IDF is doing the worst of the worst. The soldiers are coming in and they go straight to the children's room.
Can you imagine it? Yeah, absolutely. How barbarian of them. This is the lack of understanding.
But to explain, why are they going into the children's room?
Every soldier I spoke to who was involved in house-to-house operations to find tunnel entrances and weaponry said the same thing. They all said the same thing as Major Y. Everybody very, very, very fast from the beginning of the operation in Gaza, the IDF worked out that, yes, if you go into a house, if you're looking for the entrances to the tunnel networks to try to find the hostages or the Hamas leadership, or if you're going to try to find the weaponry, apart from the fact that weapons were in every second to third house found. So, I mean, the whole of the Gaza was weaponized. And that's just a very important thing to keep in mind. But they worked out very fast. If you're looking for weapons, if you're looking for the tunnel entrances, just go straight to the children's bedrooms, because that's where Hamas have put them.
Why?
Because they know, again, that it's a win-win for them. It's a win-win. Either the rocket-propelled grenade, as I give one example, is sitting under the child's cot and is not found because the Israeli army will not go and turn over the child's cot. Or it's found and you can say how appalling that the Israelis are turning over children's cots. It again and again, it is just, having seen so much of this up close, it is so incredibly frustrating. The lack of understanding of the rules of war that Hamas simply use to their advantage. You know, you'll turn on the evening news and you'll see the BBC or somewhere else say that the Israelis attacked a mosque or fired at a mosque in Gaza. And they will not tell you that, you know, I mean, it happened actually with Gadi Eisenkot's nephew was killed in one of the operations in Gaza, where Gadi
Eisenkot was a former chief of staff in Israel in the IDF and is a member of of
the war cabinet at the time. Lost his son and his nephew in Gaza. I think it was Eisenkot's nephew who was killed when Hamas started. The fighters, the terrorists flooded out from tunnels underneath a mosque, firing from the top of the mosque, killing Israeli soldiers, and brilliant for Hamas, and amazing that people don't understand that this is how they operate. They do that because, again, it's a win-win. Either the IDF cannot fire back because it's a mosque, and therefore a protected space, like hospitals, like schools are meant to be, or they fire back and then everyone can say, look at the vicious Israelis firing at a mosque. Same with the hospitals. When I was just up the road from the Shifa compound, I won't call it Shifa Hospital because it's not primarily a hospital. It's a Hamas operating compound. And by the way, even in the 2014 war, the BBC was identifying the Shifa Hospital as being a Hamas command headquarter. The Shifa complex was used by Hamas in the knowledge that, again, it's a win-win. They took hostages there on the 7th of October to hide them, to get them into the tunnel networks. If the Israelis go after them and they go there, then the world's media will say Israelis attack Shifa Hospital. And if they don't, then the Israeli prisoners can be smuggled through with ease. The way in which the international media has totally failed to educate its readers and its viewers that this is how Hamas wages war is still staggering to me. I give an example in the book, I think, but of Jeremy Bowen, who's a lifelong disliker of Israel, who's also the chief BBC correspondent in the Middle East, who, by the way, you might have seen the other week, did a fawning interview with the new leader of Syria. It was like if he'd been interviewing a politician in Britain, he'd have been, now, why do you say this? Blah, blah, blah. And you once said this, and you once did that. Oh, but with a jihad as leader of Syria, it's all, oh, Eminence, your grace. Wonderful. Thank you so much for sparing the time. Anyway, the point is that this man, Jeremy Bowen, he was asked on air when the Israelis showed the tunnel compounds under the Shifa hospital and the arms found, because they found not only Kalashnikovs, but RPGs and grenades and much more. He's asked on air, doesn't this demonstrate the Israelis' claim that the Shifa hospital is not actually primarily a hospital, but is Hamas command headquarters? And Jeremy Bowen of the BBC says, well, it's what you've got to understand is that in that part of the world, guns are a bit more commonplace than they are in the UK. And, lots of people have Kalashnikovs. And he said it's not impossible that the Kalashnikovs belonged to the hospital's security department.
What about the rocket-propelled grenades?
As I said, I think that the grenades, then, it's not inconceivable they belonged to the cardiology department. This is preposterous. And it is being done during this war, as in every other war involving Israel, at the highest levels of the media and governments like the ignoramus government in Dublin, all of whom think they understand how to run a house-to-house war against a death cult, and none of them have a darn idea. And what's stunning to me on top of that
is it ignorance or is it something else?
Well, that's a very, very important thing to add, which is when I say they don't have a darn idea, one of the things that is staggering to me is they don't seem to want to have an idea. In fact, they positively shelter themselves from having an idea. And that's where your question becomes the most pertinent one. Why do they not want to have an idea? There are various explanations for that.
It's 2025. America's debt is over $37 trillion, and the dollar just had its worst crash since 1973. That puts your savings and your family's future at risk. That's why we trust Alpha Omega Gold, a company that stands unapologetically with Israel and supports Stand Tall Israel. Visit ao.gold/stand to claim your free precious metals wayfinder guide or call 1-855-426-4653 today. Protect your future before it's too late.